All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside our good friend Sam, you know him as CFC Central. And we are going to be getting you into a conversation around Chelsea versus Wolves, the next match on the men's fixture calendar. A chance, hopefully, for Chelsea to get back into the top four after being jettisoned slightly by Newcastle this past game week. So, Sam, how are you feeling at the moment, considering that this is the first time in a long time where Chelsea are not in the top four of the Premier League table?
Yeah, I think we discussed on the board that there was always going to be this little crisis. And I think that's where, after you get your new manager, you completely know whether you're going to be able to, hit your goals and maybe exceed expectations. And everybody, including Maresca, knew that the moment was going to come. So I think it's a good test of our resilience and our ability to innovate and adapt and overcome. So yeah, not too bothered. I think everybody's losing their minds because obviously it doesn't look good when you've lost, not lost, so you've not picked up 3 points in five consecutive PL games for the first time since the 22-23 season. But people have to understand this is the first real challenge Pereska's had to go through. So
Sure.
hopefully we'll be able to climb out of the rut and away we go towards the stronger end of the season and hopefully finish with the Champions League spot.
Yeah, we're going to get into Wolves. We're going to talk about what's been working well for them, what's not been working well for them, and take a look at how Maresca might want to set up to capitalize in this game to secure 3 points. But maybe just before we do that, Sam, warning level, threat, concern, where are you at just in terms of it? You mentioned it, people are freaking out. People are in a moment of feeling like there needs to be major changes. To some people, it's going very far in the opposite end of like absolutely blindly trust the process. And, I always tend to be a little bit more in the middle of both of those type of views. But where are you at within your crisis level for where Chelsea are at this season?
I mean, I am inclined to go by gut because I don't have the data, but I was going to say I'm going to kill to sort of get physical data on how we're performing in second halves of games because I do believe there is definitely some fall off from last season in terms of how will we cope from a gas tank perspective. I would love to see data to back it up. I don't have it, so I can only go by what my eyes tell me, and it does feel like we run out of gas after 60 minutes. A lot of players that are struggling to keep up the recovery runs. It looks like um, completely out of sorts units. So that's concerning for me from a big picture perspective. The other stuff I'm not too concerned about, to be honest. I feel like you're seeing a logical progression of what happens when two of your star scorers don't score at the same time. But I could say the same about Liverpool or Newcastle. If Salah stops scoring or if Isak stops scoring, I do believe they'd go through maybe a similar sort of spell. So it's just bad luck that two of your star attackers have suddenly, like, one is still performing, the other is sort of gone off the boil, but your wingers are dropping form at the same time, and it just hit you at the perfect time. Like, it's the perfect storm in terms of struggling to do what your team does best, which is score goals. So I do think that will rectify itself over time. Some things will get better, fingers crossed. But yeah, the physical thing definitely worries me. And yeah, the lack of subs, the lack of sort of figuring out what you can do with your existing squad in terms of fixing repetitive issues, that concerns me. I would, on a scale of 10, say it's like maybe a 5, 5.5. Nothing that can't be fixed. So a little worried, but not hitting the big red shiny button as yet.
Well, that is good to hear that it is not necessarily a full meltdown at the moment, but definitely something to at least have some simmering concerns with what's going on right now. Before we jump into the first part of our breakdown of Wolves, just want to always say a huge thank you to everybody who helps support the podcast, those who leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, those who subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button, and also the bell icon to get notified. Those are appreciated. If you subscribe to Sam's weekly newsletter, double appreciation for you. It's free. You can get it in your inbox. Doesn't cost you anything and is a wonderful midweek or a weekend read, depending upon when it drops. And we also have our wonderful Discord community in a free or paid capacity. And don't forget, you can still sign up to join us in London, end of March, beginning of April for our trip over. Just nearly about over 20 people, getting close to 25 people who signed up and joined us. Not a hard deadline, but by the 31st of January, we'd like to lock it in and get it all done and dusted. So if you've been thinking about it, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to click the link in the description to learn more. We'd love to have you join us, and maybe we'll have close to 30 people, which would be like a new record for us. So be very, very excited to have you all with us in London if you'd like to join. But look, Sam, it is Wolves. Wolves are not necessarily the Wolves of yore, as it were, but they've had some recent years of voodoo over this Chelsea team. They currently sit 18th in the Premier League table with 4 wins, 4 draws, 13 losses. They've scored 31 goals, allowed 48 in, so a negative 17 goal difference. Last 5 results, 2 wins, a draw, and 2 losses. Is there a high level overview or summary you could provide of just where Wolves are at, other than just saying they're a relegation team that's looking to go down? Or do you have a little bit more sustenance that you could add to that?
No, definitely. I think Gary O'Neill, the previous manager, had a lot of credit in the bank in terms of doing some very good things with Wolves. Us being the major example where they essentially got to very, very good results last time out. And it just didn't go to plan this time here. Lot of different reasons, and the team was like struggling from the get-go, just couldn't do what they were doing in the previous season. And Vitor Pereira was basically brought in to steady the ship, offer a little bit of an anchor, and the form sort of jumped up immediately. They started with a 3-0 win over Leicester, then they had a 2-0 win over 10-man United with, the new manager. Then they snatched a draw away at Tottenham Hotspur in the 87th. And the 2 other games in the PL, they've then lost by identical 3-0 margins against Forest and Newcastle, which by all means are very, very good sides. So it is, I think, a side that is galvanized by managerial change, trying to do something different under a new manager, which I would say is slightly encouraging for us, which we will talk about later on. But overall, I think it's still Wolves, and you have to be cautious because it is a back three kind of setup that we've struggled against. It's a side that loves going direct, loves playing with speed and with very incisive counterattacks. So it's something that has been an Achilles heel. So I tend to be erring on the side of caution in saying it's not going to be as easy a game as saying, oh wow, relegation side, points to collect.
Yeah, we take a look at it too. They are definitely a team who have plenty of injury concerns heading into this fixture, and maybe some of them improve between time of recording on Thursday, January 16th, to the match that we play in the week, not on the weekend, which is just very, very unfortunate. But that's kind of where it's at. We still have some injury issues of our own as well. We know that Badiashile, West Fofana not available. We know that we did get a chance to see Romeo Lavia and Reece James return, which I think gives us a huge boost. I think this is the inverse of the injury trend we had over the last month or so, Sam, where we saw Maresca forced into a bunch of 11s that maybe he wouldn't have selected previously, but now having opportunity to rest, having opportunity to get a couple players some minutes for the first time in a long time. It does feel like we're heading in a trajectory where this match in particular, he'll get to pick, barring any training ground injury or incident, would get to pick the 11 that it would be most ideal and most suited for this, and have truly the bench that he wants to be able to refresh the side with subs that can impact the game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna jinx this at all, Dan. I'm just gonna keep quiet and say let's just see, because every time I open my mouth on wow, no injury crisis, like someone gets hit by like a buggy at the training ground, or I don't know, gets like a bee pollen allergy. So I'm just not gonna say anything, just saying that it's good to be here and long may that continue. But yeah, it's definitely looking a lot shorter than it has in previous seasons. But unfortunately, the quality that has been hit consistently has cost us. I think West Fofana has been quite a big miss. Reece James obviously a big miss whenever he's out, and haven't been able to rotate Enzo and Caicedo, who both done pretty well. I think Caicedo has had a shaky couple of games, but it's also fatigue. Poor guy's been like playing consistently throughout the season already. But you kind of wish you could rotate those sort of slots around, and we haven't been able to do that. But um, hopefully, we can have the second half of the season with like a clean bill where we're able to rotate pretty properly. So fingers crossed on that then. But I'm not trusting it because there's still some hectic festive periods to come.
Well, look, let's get our first ad break out of the way. When we come back, we'll get all into the style of play for this Wolves team. We'll talk a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses of this side. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Okay, Sam. So we did see a managerial change with this Wolves team. We have seen, again, as you mentioned, some very interesting victories and results for them. But we've also seen a lot of poor performances from this side too. So can you walk me through where they're at now and what we should be looking at from a concern standpoint because they're Wolves' strengths?
Yeah, I think what has stayed consistent for them is that O'Neill was playing a back three, which was basically a one with like very active wing backs and employing a very transition heavy kind of direct strategy. That's, I would say, the formation has basically remained the same. So they are still playing a back three, but the big difference here in what Behed has done is he's emphasizing a lot more keeping off the ball. There's a lot more patient spells of possession that was sort of, I think, shirked away from under O'Neill. So that's been quite interesting to see. They've also started sort of pushing Sa into joining the defensive line and trying to progress the ball into midfield. He's happy to hit the ball long because they have this target man reference up front. But other than that, like it's actively trying to play the ball through lines, trying to draw the press, which I think we didn't see it so consistently with the Wolves of yore, like you mentioned. So that's something that's one to keep an eye on. We should also add that Wolves are also the Premier League's best overperformers in XG, and they're exceeding their numbers by 8.4 goals, which is, I think, three clear of the team in second. So it's a huge margin. They tend to get about like 45% of all their shots on target, which is again a very high number. So they don't shoot a lot, but when they do, it's almost inevitably always on target, and it's a high quality chance. So you have to sort of keep that in mind. They're also third for goals from counterattacks, and they've also got the furthest average shot distance, quite interestingly. So they're the only PL side with its average shot distance outside the 18-yard box. So in that sense, you've got a picture of where Wolves have been. It's just a side that'll try to draw you in or try to win the ball in the middle third. And from there, they're going to use the likes of Cunha, or they're going to use their big centre forward to knock the ball down, get their wing backs up, and then basically try to beat you in those 3v3 and 4v4 situations where they're very, very good. So that's one to keep an eye on that. Goal scoring hasn't been a problem. It's just defense has been a huge, huge issue. They've got some very exciting attackers. So they will, just like what we've been doing, try to outscore us and hopefully, um, you know, blast us away with like the kind of scorelines we've seen in the past, like 5-2 or stuff like that. So hopefully we won't have one more here. But yeah, I'm not sort of looking forward to a clean sheet here. I don't think it happens.
Oh, ominous words from you when you're willing to break out the "I don't think it's going to happen," which usually means it's going to happen. Um, What about the wingbacks? And I think obviously, we've taken away a Wolves player in attack in Pedro Neto this season, who maybe hasn't had the best, has had some decent matches, but hasn't had maybe the exact replica of some of his best work at Wolves. And then I know that they are very press heavy in this type of formation, and so are those other areas that you're thinking are going to cause Chelsea some problems if we don't commit to our role and our tactics?
Yeah, I think the wing backs are fundamental in terms of how they want to play because both the attacking midfielders essentially tuck in. And like you said, we did take Neto, who was there, I think, reliable out and out threat. But if you look at the other AMs, if you look at somebody like a Gonzalo Guedes, if you look at somebody like a Huang or any of the other guys, even Bellegarde, all of them are essentially AMs. They like functioning in those central areas. They like picking the ball up there. So there's no real width to this Wolves side, and most of it comes through the wing backs. So it's almost like they function as pivots. They have to defend, yes, but the predominant stress is to try and give the width in attack. Try to push forward uh, to those attacking areas, essentially stretch the pitch as long as possible and as wide as possible, and then essentially give those central guys the space to thrive. And that's what will happen from a Wolves perspective. I should also add that 39% of Wolves' attack come from the left-hand side, where they've got Ryan Nuri, who is the more adventurous wing back. He will push into those areas. He will also get into the box, which he does quite often. If you remember last season, he got into the box and he scored against us, arriving late from wing back, and he's very, very good at it. He inverts, he switches positions, he pops up on the other flank. So something to keep an eye on. Up front, they've got Logan Strand Larson, who's their new target man. So he's done pretty well. Again, Wolves use him as sort of like a lighthouse of sorts, where they're trying to ping the ball to him from long clearances or from the goalkeeper and try to get it down to Cunha or any of the other guys to pick up and run at defenses. He's got 7 goals and 2 assists, which is quite good in a Wolves side, which is basically in the relegation zone. But the key man everybody knows is going to be Matthias Cunha. He's got 10 goals and 4 assists, which is quite incredible. A lot of big teams looking at him, so probably won't be at Wolves for long. But now that he is, you definitely have to keep an eye on him. He shoots from long range. He's very good on both flanks. He is quite a tricky customer. So against a defense that hasn't done as well as it should have, I think that's going to be definitely one thing to watch. And the last thing I probably want to say, Dan, is like their out of possession structure. It's quite interesting. So they've changed to the point where they're now pressing high on goal kicks. They were quite reluctant to do that under O'Neill. They would just, sort of apply a little bit of pressure and then try to go into that mid block and win the ball back. But now they're actively pressing. They're trying to win back the ball back in high areas out of possession in the mid block. They go 5-2-3 a lot, which is quite an adventurous, quite a bold maneuver because you've only got two central midfielders that are patrolling a very wide space in the second line. But um, they're sort of like trusting themselves to win the ball back. It's almost a provocative kind of out of possession structure, saying, "Okay, play through us and try to give the ball in those central gaps, and we win the ball back and we'll hit you on the counter." So that's going to be interesting to see. And once they go into a low block, then the wing backs basically are backed up by the attacking midfielders, and it becomes sort of like a 5-4-1 at times under sustained possession. So that is tough to beat. And I think that's something that is quite, I would say, like apparent with this Wolves side is most of the times when they concede good chances is when they have the ball. Um, when they're in that 5-4-1, they're quite hard to break down. They have some pretty good mobile defenders out wide. They have a side that works hard, and they've got central defenders that have played consistently together and also pretty good at like making sure that there's nothing inside the box. That they're good at clearing, good at blocking, good at tackling. So yeah, essentially, don't let them go into that low block. And the best chances that have been created against Wolves happen immediately after they lose the ball or when they're trying to sort of like use the ball in adventurous fashion. So um, do it quick. Whatever you're trying to do to hurt them, don't take your sweet time. Just hit them quickly, and there's joy to be had.
Hopefully, we are on the receiving side of the joy in this match and not letting the opposition take joy away from us. And so, I think when we think about that, then there are, for a team that's 18th, there are weaknesses that are going to be very apparent in a side like that who is struggling and fighting tooth and nail to stay in the Premier League this season and into next season. I mean, I think that there's maybe concerns about their set piece play, which, has not always been the best for us, but, could be an area to attack at. And then, I mean, you mentioned just, some of the how likely it is that they concede these chances from when they have possession. Like if we can kind of create turnovers and kind of create instances of instability, there should be some goodness for us there as well. Are those some of the areas that you're looking at? Or are there other areas that you're kind of considering from your analysis that Chelsea and Maresca and the players should be looking to attack?
Yeah, I think the first thing that popped out to me on the numbers was the set pieces. They've conceded what 15 goals from set pieces, which is by far the most in the Premier League. It's one third of their goals that they've conceded, which is again a very, very big number, comes from set pieces and tend to be a lot of hard hit near post sort of corners where they've got at least the set pieces that I've analyzed under Pereira is they've got like zonal markers in those areas. Sometimes it's Huang, who's not really somebody who's got imposing height and a leap. So Tottenham, for example, had Bentancur score the equalizer at the near post. So if you hit the ball very hard through a Cole Palmer, usually an in-swinger to the near post or the center of the box, I think you can get at them. But yeah, against Morecambe, who also was superbly bad from set pieces, we basically failed to do anything at all in that first half. I think we missed like three big chances from set pieces. So none of that,
Toast and long range
wastefulness here.
shots. Got it.
Hopefully,
Just put that right on the menu again.
yeah, absolutely. I think you definitely have to get your head onto those set pieces. If you do that, then you're scoring against goals. It works. It's a formula that's tried and tested. So go for the set pieces as hard as you can. The second thing is something that we've mentioned as a strength. I think we talked about the wing backs holding width for attack and they push up. But a consistent weakness that comes for Wolves is when they leave those gaps. So Ait Nouri, for example, when he's stranded in those advanced areas, the one thing that you can do is try to play the ball down the same side. If you play it down that Wolves left side, I think you can definitely create a lot of havoc. So Spurs and Newcastle, for example, have this ploy where they essentially ask their center forwards to push onto the flank and to receive into those areas. So if you watch the Newcastle game back, if you watch the Tottenham game back, Isak and Solanke were essentially picking slots on the wing. Isak on the left wing, Solanke was drifting sort of like all across. But that's how you want to do it against, if you have like one center forward against three center backs, you want to vacate the central areas and give those center backs something to think about. Try to overload those wide areas, especially when the wing backs push up, and I think there's something that you can do definitely. So that's the second point. I think it's a tactical weakness that we can look at. Um, the third I'd say is like the 5-2-3 mid block is again like we've talked about how it's sort of adventurous. A lot of Bundesliga sides used to use it in terms of trying to win the ball back and trusting your ball winning tendencies. But I think you can create a little bit of havoc against a pivot that isn't the most mobile, isn't the most defensively active. In fact, their best defensive midfielder, Mario Lemina, has been frozen out. He's looking for a move to Saudi, so he's not playing. So if you can exploit those situations where, again, the two or three sides that I watched play against Wolves were trying to bring their wingers in, so Kulusevski moved in from the right-hand side to add an extra man in midfield. You can possibly do that because you have the profiles to make it work. And Kunku does that from the left wing. You've got Felix, who's played that role for us in the left wing. So even Sancho, for that matter, comes inside to pick the ball up. So you can definitely try that tactic instead of asking him to hold a position out wide. Just try and do it in the center and see if you can pick up the ball in those spaces. And the fourth I'd probably say, Dan, is that they're the worst defense in the league. Obviously, all of that damage was done before the new manager came, but they're the worst team in terms of their underperformance on their post-shot expected goals. So uh, dreadful. Like I think minus 8.6 is the underperformance there in terms of how many goals they should have conceded versus how many more they've conceded. So the defense, goalkeeper probably to blame. They're letting in a lot of high quality shots. So yeah, I think it's definitely one to exploit. So that's the tactical perspective, Dan. I think the wingers will have a key role to play in this game, whoever it is that starts. And if you do start it, then I think Maresca definitely needs to tell them that instead of holding with, you should be looking to sort of like play a little more inside. You should be trying to get 1v1, not with the wing backs, but you should be trying to get through against the wide centre backs. I think that's where you get a lot of joy. And if you get 1v1 with that left centre back, I would say against Wolves left centre back, then probably that's our way in. Madueke or Neto, whoever it is on the right hand side.
Great. Well, that gives us, I think, a good overview. When we come back from our last ad break, I do want to get into the specifics of what do we think is going to happen this match. You'll turn the tables like we normally do. You'll throw a couple questions my way, and we'll see how closely aligned we are on how we think this Chelsea team should try to take on this Wolves side. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Okay, Sam, your opportunity to throw some questions my way. But before we do that, I just want to throw one question your way. Thoughts and feelings on Trev Chalobah being back after his loan was canceled and he has been recalled into this Chelsea team, Chelsea side.
Shouldn't have left in the first place, to be honest.
There you go.
Absolutely phenomenal. First of all, phenomenal human being. Just seems like an absolutely amazing guy. And again, what he's done for Chelsea, I know people have their doubts in terms of how he is, in terms of his tactical fit, and whether he can play certain roles. We all have them. But this is a guy who got his groin torn against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final, got it stitched at halftime, played through extra time without a single noise. This guy loves the club, had a loan where obviously his career was going somewhere and decided to come back knowing that he might not be first choice. How can you not respect somebody like that? How can you not be, happy for somebody like that in terms of somebody who's come from Cobham, has played for us, has given us so many titles at youth level, has bred the culture that sort of like produced champions at senior level. So I have nothing but 100% love and respect for him, and delighted that he's back, ecstatic that he's back, and hopefully, him coming back in that right centre back role just gives us what we've been missing so far. So fingers crossed.
Well, I concur with that. I think it's better than the purchasing a center back, maybe under a little bit of a injury crisis type of situation, than being forced to do some January business that you don't want to do. Be interesting to see if there's any possibility of him playing well enough to convince the sporting directors to keep him around in the future seasons, or if it will be another attempt for them to move to a permanent exit for Trev Chalobah at the summer period. But we will wait and see on that one. Excited to have him back and to have another senior defender available for this team. Throw some questions my way, though. What are the things that you're thinking about that you want an answer to, that I will try to see if I'm anywhere as close to being as intelligent and as articulate as you are?
My God, please, making me blush. But yeah, I think the first question that a lot of listeners may sort of have in their mind is, what would you do at right back? Are you going to sort of throw Reece James into the mix, or are you looking to give Malo Gusto a chance to get his form back? Are you looking at Josh Achimpong? What's the situation there?
Yeah, I think if we had a kind of closer fixture from the Monday, like if there was another midweek, I probably would be thinking about that like heavy rotation period. But I'm thinking about this as, this kind of feels unfortunate to say, but I feel like this should be the preparation for getting as fit and as ready for the Man City match in the weekend on this Monday match, and not looking past Wolves, but also thinking about this as some type of preparation. And so if we think that we want Reece James to be starting in that match and be available for the entirety of the match, if he is comfortable with 60 minutes at this point, you should start with him. And that should be the solution. And it sounds like with Trev Chalobah's back, I think he should probably play alongside Levi Colwell and Mark Cucurella, and I think that should be your back line. And then I think you have then the availability for Josh to potentially come in as a later substitute for Reese, or potentially you shift Trev over to the right back situation later in the game. Maybe you've gotten up two goals, maybe you're feeling very comfortable and you have the flexibility to bring Josh in, you shift Trev outright, and then you have your back four that way. But to me it feels like if Reese is healthy and available, as much as we kind of talked about it in the post Morecambe match review, like, I think there's still some lingering concerns about like what will he be able to do this season. I mean, that equalizing goal was really, really nice, and it would be good if he could find any level of form, particularly ahead of what I imagine will be a very contentious fixture against Man City.
Well said. It was what, 800 days after which Reece scored in the league. So obviously great to see him back on the score sheet. And we all know that once he gets to full fitness, you can expect, I think, 10 goal contributions from there, from wing back. So, yeah, absolutely agree with the quality part. It's something we've been missing with Gusto as well. I think, especially when You've been asked to play that right 10 slot. You would probably expect a little more in terms of output, in terms of creativity. Greece gets you that. But again, you've got Man City, which is, I think, a more definitive fixture for multiple reasons. So probably makes sense to do it your way. I think I'm sort of in complete agreement there. But well done, Dan. I think you're off to a very good start. The second question is something that I really liked in terms of what you said about Nico Jackson, whether you know he should be sort of scapegoated for what is essentially an attack that isn't really scoring as it should. It is Palmer FC. Up until Reece James's free kick went in, nobody else except Palmer had scored for us since Christmas, which is quite a devastating statistic in
Gosh.
terms of a side. Yeah, in
Thanks,
terms of a
Sam.
side
I
that's built
hate
its
it. I
entire.
hate what you just said. It's the worst thing you've ever said in this podcast. Please take it away.
Oh my God, yeah, all the jokes that I've cracked have been disregarded, which actually makes my day. But yeah, I think that's what sort of worries me in that perspective, that only Palmer's been scoring for us and nobody else has stepped up to the plate. So you sort of rightly said, he shouldn't be scapegoated. It's, a collective thing. We should be improving it. But that being said, we know Maresca is not trusting Nkunku at nine. He's not trusting Felix at nine. In the Premier League, probably not very happy with Giu. Do you sort of go with Mathis Tell, who's been linked to Chelsea, or do you sort of like just find a loan for these 6 months, or are you finding solutions internally? What are you doing if you're Chelsea manager?
Gosh. Trying to see if there's any synergy that you can find with the sporting directors to get you the type of player you're looking for. I mean, I just feel like we can always read into it and try to figure out what's going on, but it feels as if there's, not the player in the side trusted by the manager to facilitate the on pitch forward attack behavior other than Nico Jackson. I also think there's like just maybe this is a maddening desire. I think there's also a desire to just persevere because, like, how unlucky can one player be? And I mean, like, we have seen our fair share, unfortunately, in Chelsea, of players who just have never had their luck swing. But we've seen some really strong back to back to back game performances from Nico Jackson before. And I feel as if you get him rounded out and then he and Cole Palmer are finding the value. I think it's figuring out like the Lavia coming back into the lineup, the distribution, how quickly we can move the ball to our wingers so that they can overlap with the fullback so that we can actually get into situations where we can deliver a ball appropriately to, whether it's Cole or whether it's Nico. I almost feel like I'd be more willing to do the try to see if Giyu can get something done versus getting to a situation where you are attempting or hoping this mythical lone individual is going to come and immediately contribute into this side. I just don't know if that happens. Like, I mean, we know the type of players that Chelsea have been linked to. We know, I think we've talked about Delap a couple times and Reska wanting, I think, him as maybe a striker for this Chelsea team. It just feels with, recording this on the 16th with 15 days left in the window for Chelsea to do something. I just don't know what the expected outcome is going to be if you get that striker in. It's likely ends up coming in at the very end of February, and maybe they get, or beginning of February. And so then they've missed, a run of games that where they potentially could have been impactful. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't feel enough conviction on either side to advocate so strongly for like, we need to go sign that striker. I think we've identified a solution to our center back situation, which is great. And I know that we've got obviously the links to multiple forward players because of maybe the drought that Neto, Madueke, you know, Felix outside of some games and Jadon Sancho have kind of run into. And so I think it is a total attack failure minus Cole Palmer. and I'm more confident that Nico will get back to scoring than the others will in a short duration of time.
I think that's a really good answer. I want to back that up with an interesting stat, Dan.
Oh, please do
Do
that.
you
Just give me some validation.
no, so just to add, scoring has been an issue, yes, but do you know the only club with two players in the top 10 in terms of chance creators?
I'm gonna guess it's Chelsea Football Club.
It is. Would you like to guess which two players?
Within chance creation, I'm going
Yes.
to guess it's Cole Palmer and Nico Jackson.
Cole Palmer is number one, but not Nico Jackson.
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head. Then, so why don't you shoot it at me so people don't hear me just eat
It's,
up
En-
air for a couple of seconds?
it's Enzo Fernandez at number 10.
Wow, that 8-9 game streak really ended up fixing that problem for him.
Yeah, and at last game he managed seven, which is the highest he's managed in any game in his senior career. And he's only managed it one other time, I think, for Benfica. So again, like great to see his remontada there. But in terms of at least creating chances, in terms of making shots happen, there is enough firepower there. It's just the clinical touch that is missing. And like you rightly said, I think we've come to a point now where it's not just like we've talked about this before. We don't want squad fillers. We want elevators. We want creme de la creme. So you have to spend good money to get them, whether that's Duran or whether there's still a chance to go after Samu, is a question that higher ups would be able to answer better than I will. But I think instead of betting over another raw prospect, I think that's what people are expecting us to do. So that's, I think, going to be an interesting one. But from a short-term perspective, if, by some miracle, Mireska is listening to this and I had a chance to say something to him, I would probably say that, for tomorrow, just for tomorrow, or even if you want to try it against like back threes, if you want to go for an alternate center forward, use Pedro Neto. And
Mm.
I will just, yeah, he's played there for Wolves, and the equation that he's done it in terms of like how he's played in a front three is he's just drifted from that central area to the flanks, very deep, trying to pick up the ball and drive at defenders. And he's very good at spinning his centre back. So he's done that pretty well. Wolves will be again in that conundrum because they've only got one player being marked by three of their defenders. So if that guy goes for a run, one of them has to chase. And I don't think, except maybe like um, I think the central centre back, who is it? Uh, Bueno, what's his name? Yeah, I think the central centre back, except him, the other two guys, like I don't think want to step out. I haven't seen much of Dawson this season, who was quite a fixture last season. But Arpadu on the left centre back side is somebody who played against Newcastle, wasn't quite impressed. So if you can basically drag one of those guys out or out of their like comfort zones, then you're in business. And if you've got a very wily customer like Pedro Neto, who I still think is much better centrally than he is out on the flanks, then you can make some magic happen. So Maresca, when you bring off Nico Jackson, if you bring off Nico Jackson, throw Neto there, and we'll see what happens.
Well, that would be fantastic if he can contribute in other ways to this team and to this side. We would definitely appreciate that. Look, we're going to get into predictions. So, Sam, hit me with a fun prediction to close out this episode.
Let me give you a couple of them. So I think Wolves end up making 15 plus fouls. It's going to be a very, very foul-y affair from their end. I also think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think there are at least four goals in this game. Hopefully three, at least three of us from us. But yeah, it's going to be a high scoring game. Probably going to be a set piece goal, like we've talked about it. And a Chelsea goal comes from Wolves' left hand side. It comes when Aït goes up, and we basically find a gap there for Madueke or Neto, and we score from there. What about you? Do you have any ambitious predictions to make? Don't be cozy here, Dan. I need to hear some absolutely outlandish ones here so we can give you the credit when you deserve it.
Well, look, it will have been over a month since Nico Jackson scored a Premier League goal. So I think producing not one, but two goals to get everybody off of his back and behind him again in the right way is where I'm going to be in this one. I think he is going to have a point to prove and silence some of the haters. And if not, this is getting clipped and people are going to shove it in my face. But you know what? I want to back our guy to get it done on the day and return to a situation. I also am going to predict, maybe this is not a prediction because it just feels like the general tomfoolery at this moment. There'll be another odd decision that VAR is related in that we're going to be on the wrong side of because that is just the way that this season is going. And so 12 versus 11, as it always is, and it always should be because it's Chelsea versus the world.
Oh no, that I like that, to be honest. And I mean, 2 goals takes Nico Jackson to the 15 goal contributions mark, and it takes him like to double digits, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think it's just that mythical barrier, like we say in cricket, every time you enter your 90s, the nerves kick in and you're sweating because you're near a landmark. Maybe that's it with Nico. He's just like a little nervous. So hopefully he gets over that mark and then just breaks loose like he did last season. But I would put good money on that happening. I think Wolves are there for the taking. It's just hopefully we do the things that we're supposed to do, which we haven't been doing in these past few games. But I think those are really good predictions. I think not unrealistic to expect a shot outside, like a goal from outside the box either. I'll also add that in. So if any of these come true, you know, a coffee for you, Dan, for me, or a beer, whatever it is that you prefer.
We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition and if Sam owes me a beverage of my choice. But that's going to do it for this episode and this preview. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you so much to Sam for getting us prepared and ready to go for this Monday match in the Premier League because it's not enough to just have it on the weekends anymore. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, Chelsea fans, thank you for supporting the podcast. And you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.